I'm Dr. Sofia, and here's what I want you to picture. You wake up tomorrow, and the tightness behind your eyes is gone. You slide out of bed without that dizzy half-second wobble that used to make you reach for the nightstand. Your morning reading, the one your cuff has been yelling about, actually looks calm. Give me 7 days, and that's exactly what I want you picturing right now. Not someday, not eventually, 7 days from this exact moment. That's not a supplement pitch, that's not a miracle tea. And it's not some detox routine you scrolled past last week. That's one simple move after meals, plus 3 small companions stacked around it in the right order, each one under 10 minutes. Here's the contrast though. Right now, for a lot of you watching, afternoons feel like a slow-motion ambush. You take your pill, you do everything your doctor told you, exactly as prescribed, and still, somewhere between 30 and 90 minutes after lunch or dinner, your cuff spikes like it never got the memo. Medication handles the baseline. It does not fully cover the post-meal window, the one after a heavy plate at lunch, the one after a steak dinner with sides, the one that shows up the moment you finally sit down to relax after a long day. Those windows are where a meaningful share of cardiovascular events actually happen. The dangerous post-meal cluster your cardiologist may have mentioned once in passing and never fully explained. Pills taken once or twice a day cannot patrol every hour. They flatten your average. They don't chase down every individual spike the way your body actually experiences them minute by minute. So today, I'm giving you one move that targets that exact window, plus 3 supporting habits that protect the rest of your day. But listen carefully because there's a nuance buried in here. One detail that decides whether this whole protocol works or quietly falls apart. Most of you get it backwards, and I'll show you exactly why right in the middle of this video. Let's start with the move almost nobody talks about. Not your diet, not your salt, your breathing. Specifically, the way you breathe in the first 10 minutes after you finish eating. Here's the mechanism. When food hits your stomach, your body shifts into what physiologists call a parasympathetic dominant state to handle digestion. Your heart rate should gently come down. Your blood vessels should slightly relax. Digestion should happen calmly. But for a lot of people, that switch doesn't fire cleanly. Stress hormones stay elevated. The vagus nerve, the long nerve that runs from your brain down into your abdomen and controls that digestive switch, gets partially overridden. The result is a noticeable, measurable blood pressure bump right when your body should be settling into digestion. Studies on slow breathing right after meals have actually shown sharp reductions in that post-meal pressure bump. The pattern that works is simple. Inhale through your nose for about 4 seconds, let your belly rise, not your chest. Then exhale slowly through pursed lips for about 8 seconds, like you're softly blowing out a candle across the room. The exhale is twice as long as the inhale. That ratio matters enormously, because it directly stimulates the vagus nerve, which slows your heart rate and tells your blood vessels to relax out of that raised state. One full cycle takes 6 to 8 seconds, which works out to roughly 8 to 10 cycles a minute. Slow, deliberate, belly soft on the inhale, belly drawing back on the exhale. So what you actually do, the moment you finish eating, stay where you are. Don't jump up to clear the dishes, don't start scrolling. Plant your feet flat, rest your hands on your thighs. Soften your shoulders, and breathe. In through the nose, belly rises. Out through pursed lips, longer than the inhale, belly falls. 2 minutes. That's it. 15 to 20 full cycles. You can do it right at the dinner table. You can do it on the couch. You can do it at your desk in the lunchroom, and nobody will notice anything different about you. I had a patient, James, 67 years old, whose afternoon readings were consistently 15 to 20 points higher than his morning ones. He blamed lunch. He blamed stress at work. He blamed his medication timing. He never blamed the 90 seconds he spent catching his breath after eating, because he wasn't catching it. He was rushing straight into the next task every single day. Once he started the 2-minute breathing window, his afternoon numbers came down inside of 2 weeks, not because his pill had changed, because the spike his pill couldn't catch finally had somewhere to land. Now here's your brain rest moment, because I just threw a layer of nervous system physiology at you. Think of your vagus nerve for a second like a long, calm telephone line running from your brain to your gut. Every slow exhale is a quiet signal traveling down that line, saying, relax, the meal is handled, you can stand down. Fast, shallow chest breathing is like hanging up the phone mid-call and shouting into the hallway instead. Same information. Completely different reception on the other end. The breath is the dial tone. You don't change what your nervous system is processing. You just change how loudly you're announcing it. Athletes have known this for decades without calling it by name. Boxers breathe long and slow between rounds to drop their heart rate. Yogis have built entire disciplines around the same exhale longer than inhale pattern. You don't need to be either one. You need a chair, a finished plate, and 2 minutes of not rushing into the next thing. That's the entire entry fee. Second habit. This one's about timing your movement, and the timing matters more than most people assume. After your biggest meal of the day, for most of you that's dinner, your digestive system suddenly demands a huge amount of blood almost immediately. Your gut at that moment is basically shouting for resources. Blood gets redirected toward your stomach and intestines to handle the work. Sometimes as much as a quarter of your total circulating volume moves in that direction. Here's where the danger shows up. If your body has to redirect that much blood on short notice and your vessels aren't cooperating well, it compensates by raising pressure elsewhere, just to keep supply adequate everywhere. Some of you have felt this, that heavy, sluggish, slightly overheated feeling 20 minutes after a big plate of food. Maybe you assumed that was just being full. It is partly a circulatory event happening quietly underneath the fullness. Larger meals make this worse. A heavy dinner with rich sauces and dense protein pulls far more blood into digestion than a lighter plate would. So the heavier your dinner tends to run, the more this particular habit matters specifically for you. The fix isn't complicated. 10 minutes of slow walking. Not a jog, not anxious pacing. Think strolling the block or just circling the kitchen and living room if the weather is against you. Slow movement keeps the circulatory system flexible during that redistribution. Your leg muscles are contracting gently, moving blood efficiently, so your vascular system doesn't have to compensate by tightening up and pushing pressure higher. You're essentially giving your body a second option besides clamping down to solve the digestion blood flow problem it faces the moment you finish eating. Tight 10 minutes, no gym session, no athletic gear. Just hands in pockets, comfortable pace. I had another patient, Arthur, 58 years old, who insisted his evenings were too tight for anything extra. 10 minutes felt impossible on paper. Once he moved it to right after dinner before sitting down at all, he told me it barely registered as effort. His readings, though, told a completely different story within 3 weeks. One small caution here, and it applies mostly to older patients or anyone who has ever felt lightheaded standing up after a meal. If you notice actual dizziness after eating, not just fullness but genuine lightheadedness, that can be a separate condition called postprandial hypotension, where pressure drops too far after meals instead of rising. If that's you, walk slowly, stay near something to hold on to, and mention it to your doctor before making this a daily habit. Quick brain rest here too, because this next detail surprised even me the first time I came across the research. A short slow walk immediately after a meal has, in some studies, produced bigger short-term pressure and blood sugar benefits than a much longer walk earlier in the day, completely disconnected from any meal. Timing matters as much as duration. A short walk at the right moment can outperform a long walk at the wrong one. Now, quick question for you while we're on this one. When's the last time you walked within 5 minutes of finishing dinner instead of sitting straight down on the couch? Type the honest answer in the comments. Years. Months. Or I already do this. I read these every single time I post a video, and I promise you, you are not the only one who's gonna say years. Third habit. And this one targets the most dangerous stretch of your entire day, whether you've noticed it or not. Somewhere between the moment you wake up and the following 2 hours, your blood pressure naturally surges. This isn't a malfunction, it is built into you, older than modern medicine, older than the concept of a blood pressure cuff. Your body releases cortisol and adrenaline to get you moving, and pressure rises to match the incoming demand for activity your ancestors would have actually used. The problem is the surge itself is disproportionately linked to cardiovascular events, strokes, heart attacks, clustering right in that early morning window far more than at any other time of day. Cardiologists sometimes call it the morning surge phenomenon, and it's the reason a disproportionate number of cardiac events happen between 6 cl and 10. Zozo in the morning, not randomly scattered across the clock, your body is ramping up fast. And if you go from horizontal to 100% sedentary, sitting, scrolling, staring at the ceiling, checking emails from bed, that surge has nowhere productive to go. All that mobilized glucose, all that adrenaline, and your muscles are doing absolutely nothing with it. Just letting it circulate and strain your vessel walls. So here's a small practice. The moment you're up, don't collapse into the nearest chair with your coffee. Walk to the kitchen instead of shuffling. Stretch your arms overhead. Open the curtains and walk to the window and back before you sit down anywhere. 3 to 5 minutes of light movement, nothing more, gives that surge somewhere useful to go. Your muscles use the extra glucose and oxygen your body just dumped into your bloodstream instead of it simply sitting there straining your vessel walls for no reason. Brain rest. Picture your body's morning surge like a car engine revving hard before you've put it in gear. Sitting still is flooring the accelerator in park. Movement is releasing the clutch. It channels that energy into something the engine was actually built for, instead of just burning fuel and generating heat with nowhere to go. I want to add one small detail here, because a lot of patients skip this step specifically, and it quietly undoes the whole habit. Coffee before movement makes the surge worse, not better. Caffeine itself raises blood pressure temporarily, stacking directly on top of your natural morning spike. The two effects add together rather than cancel each other out. So move first, even just those 3 to 5 minutes, and let the coffee come second. Small sequencing change, real difference in how sharp that spike ends up being and how long it takes to settle. One more thing worth mentioning quickly. Sunlight amplifies this effect. If you can get those 3 to 5 minutes near a window, or better yet outside on a porch or balcony, your body's internal clock synchronizes faster, and that tends to smooth the surge even further on top of the movement itself. And here's something worth clarifying, because I know a few of you are thinking it already. This is not the same as jumping straight into a hard workout the second your feet hit the floor. A gentle walk to the kitchen and back is completely different physiologically from an intense session on an empty stomach first thing, before your body's even fully awake. One channels the surge gently. The other can spike you even higher, especially if your medication hasn't kicked in yet for the day. Fourth habit. And this is the one most people skip entirely, because it happens right before sleep, when nobody's paying attention anymore and the day already feels finished. Nighttime blood pressure is supposed to dip. Doctors have a specific word for it, dipping. And a healthy dip is usually somewhere around 10 to 20% below your daytime average. That dip matters enormously. Poor dippers, people whose pressure stays high overnight, carry meaningfully higher cardiovascular risk than good dippers, even with identical daytime numbers. Two men, same daytime reading, completely different risk profiles. Just based on what happens after midnight, here's what sabotages your dip throughout the day. Especially if you're on your feet or sitting upright, fluid tends to settle in your lower legs. Same pooling mechanism we discussed earlier, just accumulating slowly over many hours instead of minutes. When you finally lie down flat to sleep, that fluid doesn't just disappear, it redistributes back into your central circulation all at once. Adding volume your heart now has to manage overnight, right when it should be resting the most. So about 30 minutes before you actually go to sleep, lie down and prop your legs up. A couple of pillows under your calves or against the wall, whatever's comfortable, higher than your heart. That elevation lets gravity do slow, gentle work ahead of time. Fluid redistributes gradually while you're relaxed and your body has bandwidth to handle it. Instead of dumping all at once the second you lie flat for the night, forcing your heart to absorb the whole shift in one moment. 30 minutes sounds specific, and it is. Less than that, and a lot of the fluid hasn't finished redistributing before you fall asleep and roll onto your side. More than that, and most people just get restless waiting, which defeats the entire purpose of a calming pre-sleep routine. A couple of pillows works for most patients of mine. If your calves and ankles tend to swell noticeably by evening, socks leaving deep marks, shoes feeling tighter by dinner time, you might need your legs a bit higher, closer to a stack of 3 pillows or a foam wedge. Whatever the height, the goal is simple. Feet above heart level comfortably, without straining your lower back. Brain rest on a genuinely surprising detail. This is part of why compression socks work for some people during the day. Same principle, opposite direction, preventing pooling instead of draining it afterward. Elevation before bed is essentially the evening version of that same idea. Gravity assisting instead of gravity working against you for once. I had another patient of mine, Henry, 62 years old, who kept telling me his home readings were fine during the day, but his cardiologist's overnight monitor flagged him as a poor dipper. He was doing everything right at breakfast and lunch. He just wasn't doing anything at all in the 30 minutes before bed. That's often the missing piece, not a new medication. Just 30 quiet minutes with your legs slightly higher than your heart and a phone left in the other room. One practical note before we move on. When that 30 minutes is up and you're ready to actually get into bed, stand up slowly. You've just spent half an hour with your legs elevated above your heart, and standing too fast afterward can occasionally cause a brief head rush, especially if you're already on blood pressure medication. Sit up first. Pause for a breath or two, then stand. Small step, easy to forget, worth remembering. Now stop for a second because I need to say something a lot of health content skips entirely, and I think skipping it does real harm. A meaningful portion of you watching this, I'd guess close to half, will try one or two of these habits, get frustrated when your numbers don't move dramatically within a few days, and quit within a week. Then you'll assume it simply doesn't work for you. Here's why that happens, and it's not because the habits don't work. It's because bodies are not identical, and nobody warned you about that part. If you have congestive heart failure, elevating your legs before bed can actually push more fluid back into circulation than your heart can comfortably handle overnight. That's a case where this specific habit needs your cardiologist's direct input first, not a video, and definitely not a guess based on how it worked for your neighbor. If you have significant kidney disease, your fluid handling is already compromised, and redistributing fluid through leg elevation or walking may behave differently than it does for someone with healthy kidneys. What helps one system can complicate another, and the difference isn't always obvious from how you feel day to day. If you're on certain diuretics, your baseline fluid balance is already being managed pharmacologically. Adding these habits without your doctor knowing can occasionally produce confusing readings. Not because something's wrong, but because two systems are adjusting at once, and neither one is telling you clearly which change caused what. There's also a smaller group, patients with significant peripheral artery disease or varicose vein complications where leg elevation feels great, but the walking component needs pacing. 10 minutes might be too much on day 1. Start with 5 and build from there gradually. This isn't a competition and nobody's grading your first week. And one more group worth mentioning, because it is easy to overlook. If you already deal with orthostatic hypotension, that lightheaded feeling whenever you stand up too quickly regardless meals, pair these habits with slower transitions everywhere. Standing up from the breathing position, getting up from leg elevation, even getting out of bed in the morning. The habits still help. You just move between positions a little more gently than someone without that issue would need to. We are not telling you to stop your medication. That would be dangerous, frankly reckless advice. And honestly, it is the kind of advice that gets channels like this taken down because it puts people at real risk. Our goal here, including here at my own practice, is to support what your doctor already prescribed, to cover the hours and situations where a once or twice daily pill simply cannot reach on its own. Now, here's the nuance I promised you at the very beginning. The one detail that decides whether this whole protocol holds together, or just becomes 4 disconnected tips you forget by Thursday afternoon. These 4 habits are not 4 separate tricks. They are one loop running across 24 hours. And the loop starts the night before, not the morning of, which is exactly backwards from how most people approach it. If your nighttime dip is poor, because you skipped the leg elevation, because fluid redistributed all at once while you slept, your morning surge the next day tends to be sharper and harder to blunt. No matter how much you walk around your kitchen at 7 a.m., the evening habit sets up the morning habit to succeed or fail. It is sequential, not parallel, and the order genuinely matters. That is the part almost everyone gets backwards. They focus on fixing the morning spike directly, more coffee-free walking, more breathing practice, and they ignore the night that caused it to be so severe in the first place. You can do the morning walk perfectly and still get a rough reading, because the real problem started 10 hours earlier, lying flat with your legs at heart level, quietly pooling fluid you never gave a chance to redistribute gently. Start with the 30 minutes before bed. That's the anchor habit. Everything else in this protocol works better once that piece is in place. And honestly, if you only adopt one of these 4, make it that one. Think of it like a chain. Good elevation before bed leads to a better overnight dip. A better dip leads to a gentler morning surge. A gentler surge, met with 3 to 5 minutes of movement instead of coffee and stillness, stays controlled through the whole first hour of your day. And a controlled morning makes the after-meal habits later on work with your body instead of playing constant catch-up against it. Break the chain at the start and every habit after it works twice as hard for half the result. I'm curious about something actually. If you've ever measured your own pressure first thing in the morning versus later in the day, tell me the difference you noticed. Even roughly 10 points, 20 points, whatever you remember. I read every one of these comments, and I'm always surprised how consistent the pattern is across different people, different ages, different medications. Let's put this together into something you can actually use tomorrow. Not just remember for a day and forget by the weekend. Try this for 1 week, start to finish, and actually track it somewhere. Not in your head, Write it down or use whatever app already logs your readings, the breathing window after meals. 2 minutes of slow belly breaths with the long exhale. Right there at the table. The 10-minute walk after your biggest dinner. No phone required, just movement. Hands in your pockets, moving within minutes of waking up. Before the coffee, before the inbox, before you sit down anywhere, and legs elevated for 30 minutes before you sleep. The anchor that makes the other 3 actually count. None of it replaces what your doctor prescribed you. Think of it as covering the shifts your medication cannot clock in for. The post-meal hour. The first hour of your morning. The deep hours of the night when a pill taken at 8 in the morning has already worn thin by midnight. 4 habits, none more than 10 minutes each. None of them require equipment, a gym membership, or rearranging your entire schedule. What they require is doing them in the right order, and actually starting tonight, not next Monday, not after the holidays, not once things calm down at work. If this changed how you think about your own numbers, a like genuinely helps more people over 50 find this exact information before their next checkup, before their next scare, before their next visit where the doctor just quietly adjusts the dosage again, without addressing any of this underneath it. Kindly consider subscribing too, since I am covering the specific reasons medication alone often falls short next week. The second part of this exact conversation, and you will not want to miss where that one goes. And if you have been wondering why your pressure still spikes even on medication that's supposedly working, that is actually a deeper topic than what we covered today, and I have got a full breakdown waiting for you in another video. Links in the description. Take care of that one breath after meals. It has been quietly doing the digestive calming job for you every single day, whether you noticed it or not. And now you, alongside me, Dr. Sofia, actually know how to help it do that job a little better.